At the far corner of the room, behind a curtain that used to be a toga, the oldest of them sleeps first. Her name is Unia. She does not speak anymore. Her body is failing. But the others bring her warm cloth, tuck her in, and whisper her name like a prayer. They are not sure if she is alive or dying. But they honor her still. This is their temple. Not of gods or statues, but of scars. And as they settle down, one by one, into thin sheets and restless dreams, the quiet becomes sacred. No one dreams of love anymore. Love has become a lie whispered by men with heavy hands and wine-stained mouths. No one dreams of escape either. They've seen what happens to the ones who run. One was dragged back by her hair. Another disappeared into the Tiber and floated to the docks 3 days later, her wrists tied with red silk. So instead, they dream of sleep. Real sleep. Sleep without being touched. Sleep without being woken by footsteps or breath or demand. Sleep that belongs only to them. In that brief hour before the roosters stir and the streets begin to hum, the brothel becomes a graveyard of hope, yet not of despair. Because somehow, they wake again. Somehow, every morning, they smear the rouge, wash the rags, whisper the fake names. They touch the iron bolt, still warm from the night before, and pretend it does not feel like a collar. Because what else is there? In this life, survival is the only art they know. And each night, when the doors close once more, the song returns, broken, imperfect, fading into dark. Sleep, little sparrow, sleep, little sparrow. But the sparrows have long flown away. Only caged birds remain. And the cage does not creak. It locks. Her voice is thin, almost childish, though her eyes are already old. The song is crooked and broken, like something she once heard through a crack in the door of a cottage long burned down. The words don't make sense anymore. They melt together, heavy with the accent of a province she'll never see again. No one tells her to stop. It's better than the silence. Across the room, Livia counts the coins. Her fingers are fast, mechanical. She does not smile. She sorts them into small piles, one for the madam, one for the house, one for the guard who watches the gate, one for herself. Her pile is the smallest. 6 more and I can buy shoes, she says. No one answers. She's been saying that for months. The girl beside her holds a torn tunic in her lap, stitching slowly in the dim lamplight. Her needle was bent days ago. Her thread is from an old curtain. Still, she sews. It's the only thing that makes her feel like she owns something. Like she's repairing more than cloth. Like maybe, with enough stitches, she can hold herself together. Someone coughs. Someone else lights a wick dipped in old wine to keep the flies away. The floor creaks. The wine is passed around, watered down to bitterness. They drink it anyway. It numbs just enough. Sometimes, they talk. Not about the men. Never about the men. Instead, they speak of recipes they almost remember. Bread baked in ash. Fish salted with thyme. A fruit that once fell from a tree near a river they only half believe existed. One girl swears she saw a dolphin once. Another says she kissed a priest. They all laugh, not because it's funny, but because it keeps the walls from closing in. The room is a patchwork of mattresses, straw pallets, and discarded blankets. No one owns anything but what she can hide in the folds of her clothes: combs, ribbons, a coin with a hole through it, a pebble shaped like a heart. These are treasures in a world where everything else has been taken. By midday, the floor smells of vinegar and rose ash. The girls sweep it out. No blood. No herbs. Just the faint scent of survival. One girl dares to speak, later, when the sun touches the fresco of Venus above the doorway. "Do you think she was a mother once?" she asks. No one replies. Because the truth is too cruel. Because even mothers here are not allowed to mother. Because the world outside that brothel never asks what was lost. Only what was sold. By nightfall, the city forgets. The laughter returns, brittle and forced. The men come again, smelling of leather and wine, speaking softly or cruelly or not at all. But inside each girl, something is quieter. A new silence. Not of pain, but of forgetting. And so they begin again. Painting lips with crushed berries. Oiling hair with old perfume. Whispering fake names through cracked teeth. All while remembering nothing. Except for the scent of rosemary and vinegar. Except for the cracked mirror and what it once held. Except for the sound of Auntie's footsteps fading into fog. And tomorrow, the door will creak again. At night, the doors are shut with a sound that echoes like finality. The bolt slides into place, thick, rusted, deliberate. It is not the sound of safety. It is the sound of a lock that doesn't keep danger out, but seals it in. Inside, the air shifts. The laughter from the street fades into nothing. The drunken footsteps, the soldiers' songs, the vendors' shouts, all go silent. The world outside forgets them. And now, the performance ends. What remains is the aftermath. The girls move slowly, shedding the masks they wore all day. Lip paint smudged. Eyes ringed with kohl now streaked by sweat and tears. Some rub oil into bruises. Others scrape dried blood from their thighs with a damp rag. No one asks whose it is. They never do. There are no visitors here, only witnesses. The young ones still try to hold on to something. A ritual. A memory. A lullaby. Tonight, Daria sings again. Her hands are calloused, yet gentle. Her touch carries the memory of every child who never took a breath, of every mother who never became one. The girl lies back, legs trembling, clutching a small cracked mirror in her hand, its silver backing long faded, her own reflection fragmented and dull. She does not look away from it. It's her anchor, her only witness. In it, she does not see herself. She sees a child who never asked for this, who once plucked wildflowers in a village long burned to the ground. Auntie hums. Not a tune, but a vibration, low, steady, like a lullaby buried under rubble. The metal tool glints briefly in the firelight. Then comes the sound. That wet, private sound of something leaving a body before it even had a name. The girl gasps. Not from pain. Pain is familiar. Pain is routine. She gasps because something deeper is breaking, something beyond skin or soul. A memory being erased. Auntie moves efficiently. Wraps. Binds. Cleans. She whispers to the girl now, not in comfort but in ritual, "It's done. It's over. You're still here." But the girl does not answer. When it's finished, Auntie places a small cloth bundle in the corner, covered in rosemary. No one will ask what's inside. They all know. Later, it will be taken quietly with the trash, as if it were never here. As if none of them ever were. The girl stumbles back into the sleeping room, blood trailing lightly at her heels. She drops the mirror onto her cot, curls around it, and closes her eyes. She does not cry. She breathes in silence like it's the only thing left. That morning, no one touches her. Even the loud ones, the ones who giggle and chew figs with cracked teeth, sit still. The laughter stops for a day. Not out of sorrow, but out of ritual. This, too, is a ceremony. Auntie moves on, visiting the next girl whose calendar has betrayed her. Another room. Another mirror. Another name swallowed by the walls. Another poured wine into her cup. The world didn't end. But something in her did shift. Not toward purity. That was a lie men sold to keep women quiet. No, she didn't feel clean. She felt true. The gods didn't want her. Fine. But the city still held her breath, her footsteps, her name, even if no one said it. And somewhere on the hill, a cold altar stood. And maybe, just maybe, her whisper still echoed between the stone feet of Saturn. Not because he remembered her, but because she had dared to remember herself. It begins with the creak of a door and the smell of vinegar. Before dawn, when the streets of Rome are still thick with fog and stray dogs, she arrives. No knock. No greeting. Just the quiet thud of footsteps on the worn stone floor, and the faint clink of her satchel filled with secrets, herbs, linens, small blades, a bone needle sharpened to a whisper. The girls call her Auntie. She is not old, but something in her gaze has weathered into the grave. Her eyes scan each girl like a physician, a mother, and a mourner all at once. She never asks names. She already knows them, by scream, by scar, by the way they bleed in the moonlight. A few of the girls pretend to sleep, curling tighter into their straw mats, but the scent of rue and dried yarrow gives her away. There is no hiding. Not from Auntie. Not from the hour that waits in silence just before the sun splits the rooftops in gold. One girl rises without a word, moving like a sleepwalker toward the back room. She does not look at the others. They do not speak. That's the rule. No tears, no chatter, no superstition. What happens in that room is not gossip, it is grief. And the brothel has no room left for grief. Auntie kneels slowly, like she has done this hundreds of times, because she has. She boils water in a dented brass bowl, the fire crackling with a sickly sweet scent as crushed lavender mixes with vinegar and blood. He didn't. Instead, she felt a hand twist in her braid. A sharp tug backward, hard. Her scalp screamed. The soldier smelled of wine and sweat. "Whore," he hissed. "You don't belong here." She stumbled as he dragged her down the steps. No one stopped him. No one asked. Her knees scraped marble. Her braid pulled tight. She didn't scream. Back at the brothel, the madam didn't shout. She just looked. Cold eyes. Pinched lips. "You embarrassed the house," she said. Then left. The punishment wasn't lashes. It wasn't coin. It was silence. A full week. No speaking. No singing. No sound. Not from her. Not from the others to her. It was like death, but slower. Clients still came. She still did what they paid for. But no one answered her eyes. No one shared the wine jug or gave her the softer blanket. Just silence. It was a cruel punishment. Not because it hurt, but because it reminded her how much she needed to be seen. Even by other broken women. She learned things in that quiet. She learned how loud footsteps sound when you can't speak. How rats hiss when fighting over crumbs. How much her name mattered, when no one said it. By the 6th day, she sat in the corner of her room and stared at her palms. 2 lines crossed like roads. One led to the brothel. The other, maybe, to that altar. She thought about the god. Saturn. The devourer of children. The keeper of time. A cruel god, some said. But not crueler than men. And she wondered, what did it mean to be forbidden from a place built by the hands of slaves and guarded by the gaze of drunk men? Who decided that holiness was only for the untouched? She had been touched 100 times. And yet she had never felt more clean than she did on that marble step, whispering a name the gods had already forgotten. On the 7th day, the silence broke. A girl in the next room, young and new, dropped a bowl. It clattered. And she, without thinking, laughed. Just once. A short, breathy thing. The others turned. One smiled. There were places they weren't allowed to go. Not because they couldn't walk or speak or breathe, but because they were marked. Polluted. Named. The temples were for the clean women. The wives with veils, the daughters with sandals laced by slaves, the matrons who smelled of honey and prayers. But not them. Not the lupa. Not the ones with names scratched onto doorframes like curses. It wasn't written in stone, but everyone knew, a woman who sold her body could not sell piety. The gods, it was said, turned their faces from women who had been seen too much. Still, some tried. Not in daylight. Not where priests could see. But at night, during festivals. When the streets rang with music and drunk senators forgot to notice who brushed past them. That's when the girls slipped in, barefoot or in borrowed sandals, veils stolen from laundry lines. Dressed as servants. Moving like shadows. Hoping, just for a moment, to be invisible in the right way. She remembered the festival of Saturn. The city turned upside down for a week. Slaves were kings. Masters served meals. Even the statues wore wool caps and laughed in stone silence. She had waited for this. Wrapped in a plain tunic, hair braided like a handmaid, she climbed the Capitol Hill. Not for money. Not for a man. But for memory. The temple rose in pale columns above her, shadowed against the moon. People were singing, softly, slurred. She moved through them like smoke. And there it was, the altar of Saturn. Cold stone. Dark bloodstains where offerings had dried. The god stood above, eternal and blind. She didn't pray. Not really. She just stood there, heart racing, and whispered her real name. The one she hadn't spoken in years. Not the one the madam gave her. Not the one the clients moaned. The name her grandmother had said when brushing her hair by the fire. Just that. A breath. A hope. Maybe, she thought, the god might remember her. Might see something clean buried under the dirt. The door shut with its usual sigh. She was alone again. The wine sat half-finished. She thought of drinking it, but her stomach turned. Instead, she pulled the rough blanket around her and lowered herself onto the floor. It was cooler there. The stone never lied. She turned her face toward the dark corner, where a rat was already sniffing. It crept toward the bread she had saved from the morning's meal. A hard crust, no mold yet. The rat sniffed, nibbled, then ran when she moved her hand. She didn't chase it. She just stared. That bread had meant something a few hours ago. A plan, maybe. To eat it tomorrow. Or to give it to the girl in the next room who hadn't bled in 2 weeks and feared the worst. Now it sat crumbled. Insignificant. She thought about the man with the rings. Would he remember her voice? Her Ovid? Or would she be just another body in his memory, faded behind tavern smoke and morning shame? She whispered a line under her breath, one she hadn't recited earlier. What is love but a brief madness? The brothel creaked. The moon slipped across the narrow slit in her ceiling, painting silver on the walls where the gods once danced in frescoes. Now they flaked and peeled, like the rest of this life. Painted gods, painted women, painted truths. A dog barked outside. Distant. Then silence. She curled tighter, listening for footsteps, but none came. Tomorrow, there would be others. The butcher with calloused hands. The soldier who cried after. The boy who lied about his age and asked for a kiss on the cheek before anything else. But tonight, only the rat returned. She didn't stop it. Let it eat. Let it have what little she had hidden. Even bread deserved to be wanted. And somewhere in the next room, a girl coughed in her sleep. The soft rustle of cloth. A whimper. Then quiet. The night folded itself back over the alley behind Venus Street. And with it, the memory of a man who asked for poetry, and forgot her before midnight. He didn't speak immediately. Just looked around the room, as if it mattered. As if her cell, 5 feet wide and stinking of mildew, was a room at all. His eyes landed on the wall, where her name was scratched in chalk. Not her name, Lupa, the wolf. The name they gave her when she arrived from the countryside, barefoot and bleeding. Her real name? That was buried somewhere back in the hills with her mother's broken necklace. The man with rings sat down on the low stool, the one with 3 legs that always wobbled. He didn't touch her yet. Instead, he asked something strange. "Can you speak Latin?" She blinked. Then nodded. Slowly. He smiled and poured a cup of wine from the flask he brought. The smell hit her first, sour, thick, turned. He didn't seem to mind. "I want Ovid," he said. "Give me love like the ancients wrote it." So she began. Her voice trembled at first. Not from fear, but from dust. The words hadn't left her tongue in years. But they were still there, tucked in like secrets between her ribs. "Amor vincit omnia," she whispered. "Love conquers all." The man closed his eyes. For a moment, she forgot what room they were in. Forgot the smear of old blood on the corner, the lurch of rats in the ceiling. She spoke of gods and betrayal. Of stolen kisses and burning cities. And he listened, really listened. Not like the others who only wanted a grunt, a moan, a silence. Then, softly, he reached for her. He didn't push. Didn't growl. He just lifted her, lightly, slowly, as though she were a statue and his hands had paid dearly to touch marble. She let herself go still. Cold. Breath low. It was over quickly. They always ended faster when they felt something. He dressed in silence, took a long breath, and looked at her like a painting in a place he couldn't afford to stay. Then he left. Rings glinting once in the torchlight, gone. The sun moves. Light slants through the small upper window, cutting the room in half. On one side, the altar with cheap flowers and burned oil. On the other, her shadow stretching long across the floor. In a sudden impulse, she scratches her own name beneath the bed. Not Lupa. Not the name buyers know. The name her father gave her, back when she ran barefoot on the coast and stole grapes from the neighbor's wall. Just 5 letters. Hidden in dust. The act feels dangerous. Beautiful. Useless. There is a knock. 3 raps. Sharp. She rises. No mirror. She smooths her hair using the copper plate on the wall, bent and dull. Adjusts her tunic. Pulls the curtain. Outside the room, the brothel glows with red lamp oil. The girls move like dancers backstage, some still half-child, others worn smooth by years of repetition. A girl leans close and whispers, "New inspectors in town. Be sweet." She nods. Sweet. Yes. There is no rebellion here. only survival. Ritual. Repeat. 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 But tonight, behind the painted gods and burning oil, a name waits in dust. A crack in the rhythm. A crack in the wall. She touches her stomach lightly, almost without thinking. Just for a second. Then, she steps into the light again. And the frescoes above her smile. Or sneer. Or do nothing at all. He came just past dusk, when the day's heat still clung to the walls like sweat. The brothel was quieter now. The usual grunts and coin jingles had faded behind curtains and doors. But she could hear his sandals, soft against the stones, deliberate, careful, practiced. Not all clients arrived like him. Some pushed. Some laughed. Some dragged the stink of the tavern with them. But he wore rings. 4, she counted. 1 for each finger except the thumb. Bronze, iron, maybe one of gold, though in this dimness, gold and piss looked the same. Each woman keeps a small box near her pillow. Inside, a comb, a charm, a sliver of soap, a scrap of ribbon from a client who claimed to return and never did. These are their relics. Their saints. Outside, the street boils. Sandaled feet slap the cobbles. Merchants shout about figs and garum. A slave is whipped near the fountain for breaking a jug. Children chase each other with stolen bread. But here, the heat makes time slow. Stretch. Sweat down into every pore. She wipes her brow with the edge of her tunic and glances at the painted god above the bed, Venus herself, nude and draped in roses. Her gaze is bored. Eternal. She wonders if the goddess sees her. If she watches each transaction like a bored empress watching gladiators. Or perhaps the gods have all turned away. Another man enters. This one younger, with anxious fingers and no scent of coin. He bargains. She does not move. She names her price with the detachment of a butcher naming cuts. He leaves. She does not watch him go. Instead, she pulls the curtain and sits in the alcove. From the shadows, she hears Lupa, Flora, Cressida all speaking at once, laughing in low tones. Joking about customers with crooked teeth and strange requests. Their laughter is hoarse, not joyful. It is the laughter of women who know every joke already ends in silence. One of them sings softly, an old Greek lullaby twisted into something sultry. It drips through the stones like honey, slow and sad. On the far wall, the red paint has peeled to reveal a hidden name. Scratched into the brick, Petronia. A real name. Someone once forgot the rule. Or remembered it too late. She stares at the name, letting the word settle behind her ribs. She mouths it silently. Petronia. It feels like betrayal. Or hope. She wonders where Petronia is now. Under dirt? Under someone else? Waiting. Working. Enduring. Like Rome itself. By midday, the heat is unbearable. It presses against the stone walls of the lupanar like an angry god, thick with the scent of dust, sweat, and sun-rotted fruit. The walls, once whitewashed, now flake like old skin, revealing streaks of color underneath, faded frescoes of gods who never answer. Aphrodite lounges forever in crimson paint, eyes unblinking, lips parted. Bacchus raises his cup in silent toast. And above the door, where shadows pool, a satyr leers down at the women below. She has taken the name Lupa. It means she-wolf. It is not her name, not the one her mother whispered in the cradle, but it is safer. Softer than her birth name, which would link her to a dead fisherman, a burned village, and a debt unpaid. In this world, true names are dangerous. They can be traced. They can be bought. Here, names are tools, discarded and sharpened as needed. Beside her door, carved into plaster with a nail or knife tip, are her offerings. Not prayers. Services. Symbols. The twisted lines of Latin words half-learned. A price. A crude sketch of hips and lips. The face barely resembles her. But it doesn't need to. No one comes here for faces. She runs a hand across the wall, feeling the notch marks where other names once lived. Flora. Cressida. Mira. All gone now. Some married off. Some buried. Some simply vanished into the night like smoke. The walls remember more than the city ever will. A man passes in the corridor, his toga stained, his eyes glassy with midday wine. He stops. Looks at her. Doesn't speak. Then moves on to another room. She watches the back of his neck, red with heat, until he disappears. She exhales slowly, bracing herself. A silence settles. Not peace. Only the hush before noise. Inside the shared chamber, the beds are straw and stone, softened with linens that carry too many stories. A young patrician boy, barely sprouting beard, comes to her with shaking hands. He cannot speak. His toga is fresh. He smells of myrrh and wine, not yet sour. He hands her a single denarius, far too much. She waits. But he only stares at her face. "Do you hate this?" he asks. The words fall like a dropped amphora. She studies him. There is softness in him that will not last. No, she lies. And he believes her. He does not touch her. He leaves the coin and vanishes into the alley, consumed by the city that will teach him not to ask such things again. She pockets the denarius. She will eat well tonight. Maybe figs. Maybe warm bread from the baker near the aqueduct. Maybe a moment with her feet in the fountain before the night calls again. Evening creeps in like ash. Torches light the alley. The temple of Venus glows above like an open eye. More men arrive. The laughter is louder now, fueled by wine and fear of tomorrow's war or debt or scandal. The girls paint their faces again. One hums a lullaby. Another whispers prayers to the Laras. She says nothing. A body is just that, a body. Until it breaks. In the far room, a girl screams. No one moves. It will pass. Bologna leans against the stone. She is tired. Her knees ache. Her stomach is hollow. But her mind drifts to a dream she had once of a field of violets. Of lying in the sun without touching or being touched. She doesn't know where the field was. Perhaps it never existed. But in that moment, as the city groans and burns and feeds upon itself, she imagines it again. The grass. The wind. The silence. She opens her palm and places the denarius into a crack in the wall. A secret offering. A memory preserved. Some day, she tells herself, I will buy my name back. The alley falls quiet again, save for the drip of water from a broken pipe. Far above, Venus watches. Or perhaps she doesn't. But Bologna stands still in the doorway, her face shadowed, her lips red with armor. Tomorrow will come. And she will be here. By midday, the alley hums with the breath of the city's other business. Beyond the columns and processions, beyond marble baths and whispered conspiracies, is this other Rome. A Rome of flesh. Of breath. Of trade unspoken in the Senate. She sits on a low bench carved into the stone. Nearby, a girl not yet 14 giggles through broken teeth at a soldier. He fingers his coin pouch. Others call out from open doorways, names like Lupa or Chloe, but none their own. Painted signs offer services in crude images. The wall behind her is etched with graffiti, Lucius was here. He paid poorly. She watches the sun move slowly across the wall. Time is not kept by water clocks here, but by the length of shadows, by footsteps, by how many times she's told a man to be quick. There are rules. Even here. Slaves must work under their master's claim. Freed women register with the aedile. Taxes are collected from bodies like hers, coin squeezed from misery. She is both taxable and invisible, a citizen in ink, a ghost in the flesh. Sometimes they come, inspectors, priests, wives veiled in judgment. They do not speak. They look. They walk away. She once served in a brothel near the baths. Clean sheets. A madam who painted her eyes with soot and gave her fig wine when the bruises were too fresh. But the rent grew too high. Now she works here, alone, exposed, dependent on foot traffic and the mercy of weather. She has learned to read men's footsteps. The clatter of sandals on stone tells her who is drunk, who is cruel, who might leave an extra coin out of guilt or pity. She prefers the guilty ones. They are quieter. She does not scream anymore. Not when they are rough. Not when they forget to pay. Screaming invites laughter. Or worse, silence. But today, near the 6th hour, something strange happens. They say Rome never sleeps. But here, behind the painted brothel door, sleep is a luxury sold back to the women who earned it in flesh. The bolt clicks shut. Not to keep the world out, but to remind them it never belonged to them. Before the city exhales its first breath of heat, before the forum echoes with the voices of merchants and magistrates, she wakes. The room is barely larger than a tomb. A single oil lamp fights against the dark, flickering across stone walls streaked with soot and mildew. Her name is unknown to the records of Rome, but in this alley behind Venus Street, she is simply called Bellona, named, perhaps cruelly, after the goddess of war. She rises without ceremony. Sleep is not something she truly sinks into, it is a pause between tasks, between bodies. A chipped bronze mirror leans against a crate. She leans in. First, the red ochre, smeared across her cheeks and lips with shaking fingers. Not for beauty. For armor. For the illusion of health, of youth, of readiness. Then the hair, dragged into shape with pins and oil, the perfume already gone sour. It coats her skin like old wine turned to vinegar. Her tunic is pulled tight with rope dyed purple once, now dulled to bruise. The only color she owns. Outside, Rome stirs. The alley behind Venus Street groans with old urine and last night's spilled wine. Rats scurry through the broken amphory. But somewhere, down the slope of the hill, the golden dome of the Temple of Venus begins to catch fire with the sun. She pauses at the threshold. The temple is not for her. She is not divine. Yet the goddess' shadow stretches long, even here, where Rome hides what it needs but dares not bless. A man emerges from the shadows, adjusting his belt. He doesn't speak. He leaves 2 copper asses on the stone step. She doesn't pick them up yet. He isn't her first. He won't be her last. This is the morning.